Excellent. Just as a quick recap, a couple of weeks ago, we did a webinar to show folks, existing licensees, how to transition their licenses to the online system. That video and presentation will be available shortly on our website. We're still getting some things up to date, making some small adjustments, but we'll be adding that transition presentation to our website very soon. Today's focus is going to be on how to apply for a new business license application. So we are going to be looking at applying new. So for folks who may have joined to learn more about the transition process, that presentation that we did a couple of weeks ago will be available on our website. So you will be able to revisit it and learn a little bit more about the transition process for existing licenses. Again, today's focus is going to be primarily on how to apply for a brand new business license in Denver's online permitting and licensing system. So we have about a group of about 20 folks, and I'm going to go ahead and get started. We'll have others joining, I'm sure, here in the next little bit. If you've just joined us, again, today's focus is on a new business license application. This is not on a transition of an existing license. So you can rewatch the presentation that we gave a couple of weeks ago to learn more about the transition process for existing licensees, but we will be going through the new application process today. My name is Joey Pena, and I am the Cannabis Process Navigator for the Department of Excise and Licenses. I have a few of my colleagues here today, and I would love to have them introduce themselves. We have a couple of folks that I'll mention and then have them introduce themselves, but Rod Picassari and Audra Miller have done a tremendous amount of work to build this extremely scalable, functional system that is going to create efficiencies across the board for our department and for our applicants. Rod and Audra have done really a tremendous job at managing a massive project and helping us still fine-tune our communications with our applicants. So I'm going to have Rod kick off with an introduction of himself, and then Audra, Abby, and Mari, who I also see on the phone.
Absolutely. Yeah. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Rod Picassari, and I am the technology manager for the Department of Excise and License. So as Joey said, I was basically the project manager for getting these licenses online.
Excellent. Audra?
Hi, my name is Audra Miller, and I'm a management analyst with the department, and I worked on getting the licenses online and then also on the website and the training videos.
Abby?
Hi, my name's Abby Borchers. I'm a policy analyst with the department.
Excellent. And Mari, are you there?
I'm here. I'm Marisela Espinosa, and I'm a licensing tech too, and I will be processing the applications.
Excellent. Thanks, everyone. Well, I am going to go ahead and get started. We have just a brief presentation, so sort of our run of show today. I'm going to do a brief presentation to introduce some important facts about the online licensing system, and then we're going to run through a demonstration of what it looks like to actually submit an application online. I'm going to, here in just a second, share my screen. Bear with me. Excellent. We're going to run through this. All right, here we go. So this is an introduction to Denver's Online Permitting and Licensing Center for new business license applications. Let me just get this out of my way. Our new application processes. So this is the change that we're here to discuss. This change took place back in early November. Where we are now accepting applications for marijuana business licenses. That includes new business license, renewal, modification of premise, change of location, and change of ownership applications through Denver's Online Permitting and Licensing Center. We are no longer accepting paper applications for most marijuana business licenses. All applications, including the ones that I've mentioned, must be submitted through that Denver's Online Permitting and Licensing Center. The exception is for testing, marijuana testing and research and development facilities, which will continue to use paper applications. And we do have a separate website where folks can go to learn more about the paper applications for those license types. We're hoping that in 2023, we can also transition our marijuana testing facilities and our research and development facilities into the Online Permitting and Licensing Center. It was just not in this initial scope of work for our first push. Going to give you some tips for getting started with using the Online Permitting and Licensing Center. First, we recommend that you use Safari or Chrome web browsers for optimal user experience. We also recommend that each business should have its own username and password that the business controls. This is really critical, I think, particularly for our attorneys and consultants who often manage multiple clients. Each business really should have its own username and password that they're able to control and access their records at any given time. As we know, there's a lot of transition sometimes between attorneys or consultants, and we want businesses to always be able to access their records and have control. We recommend that you visit our website for required documents and information before you begin your application. I'm going to kind of walk through what that looks like and what resources are available to you. We also recommend that before you start your application, you gather all of your required documents and information before you start, and that you save your required documents as a PDF or JPEG files only. We'll also have on our website some additional documentation or guidance on file naming conventions. There are certain symbols that will not work with the system. We've discovered that in the last week or so. So we will be providing some additional guidance on file naming conventions. For the time being, as you're gathering and saving those documents, they do have to be PDFs or JPEG files only. This is an important note for new business license applications. There's a bit of a change in our processes and how we're doing things. So this is an important note on city and state application processes and how these things sort of overlap. So in Denver's Online Permitting and Licensing Center, you will be required to provide a valid Colorado marijuana business license number to apply. This means that you must submit your state business license application first. And I apologize for the typos here. I was on a long flight and that was delayed yesterday and made a few mistakes as I was putting this together. But essentially what this means is that the city is no longer going to invite you to submit a city application. That is our old process. Under our old process, we would receive a state application and then invite you to apply. That is no more. You will submit your state marijuana business license application. You will receive a valid state license number, and you can use that to submit a city application online at any time. The first steps for applying new in Denver's Online Permitting and Licensing Center, you're going to create an account and you're going to gather the required documents and information for your license type. Here in just a few minutes, as I demonstrate the system, some of this is going to start to fall into place. Under the business, short-term, rental, and occupational licensing category, you will be clicking Apply New. And then under all other business licenses, you'll see that there's no specific category for marijuana. So under all other business licenses, you're going to click Application Package and Continue Application. You're going to read through the introduction page and click Continue, and that's going to begin and guide you through our application process. And we're going to see that in practice here in just a few minutes. What to expect? Again, a mistake on my part. When you transition, this is talking more about the transition process for our existing licensees, but the same is really true for our new applicants. When you apply new, you are going to receive what we call a business file number or a BFN. That is your city license number. You're also going to receive a licensed establishment record number. That licensed establishment record number tells us more about your place of business or where you operate. An entity registration record number, which tells us more about the ownership structure for your business. And then when the licensing process is all complete, when you've completed all your inspections or any hearing requirements, you'll receive a certificate of licensure or a business license. We have some resources for navigating our online processes, and I'm going to walk you through some of those so that you're familiar with the web pages here in just a moment. We do have Denver's medical and retail marijuana licenses and permits webpage. We have a number of online training videos that Audra has created that walk you through different application processes for marijuana business licenses. We also have required information and documents checklists for new business license applications. And we'll have the webinar posted on our Apply Online for a New Marijuana Business License or Permit webpage. If you're running into any issues with the system, we are asking that you email exlapplications@denvergov.org to request support. And we're asking that you please do not copy other aliases, Marijuana Info, EXL Submit, or any other individuals. If you copy other aliases or individuals, this could create duplicate Salesforce cases. Your Salesforce cases could be resolved as duplicate, and then you will not receive a response to your inquiry. So we ask that when you reach out for support, you are only emailing exlapplications@denvergov.org. If you copy other aliases or individuals, you'll be asked to resubmit your inquiry directly to exlapplications@denvergov.org, and it could delay our response time. We do have a number of our team members, Rod, Audra, Mari, Jamie, others, myself, all monitoring our EXL applications inbox so that we can provide the right kind of support. Some folks are asking about technology issues. Some folks are asking more policy or process issues. So we're all sort of managing that inbox and handling the inquiries as they come in. We just ask that all of those inquiries go to EXL applications because of the sheer volume of requests for information that we're receiving. Excellent. So I will stop sharing that, and we are going to pop in now so that I can give you a quick spin around our website and you can see exactly what we have here and where you may be going to find more information. Here we are. Excellent. This is on denvergov.org, our medical and retail marijuana licenses and permits webpage. We have here our Apply Online for a New Marijuana Business License or Permit webpage. You'll also see information pages on transitioning or renewing marijuana business licenses online, applying for modifications of premise, transfers of location, transfers of ownership. Each of these pages is going to have a step-by-step process, required documents and information. Today, our focus is really on that new application, the new business license. So we're going to click here. And just at a very high level, the information that you're going to need to sort of walk through the process will be updated on this page. Again, we will be posting the webinar and the presentation to the Apply Online for a New Marijuana Business License or Permit webpage, so you'll be able to see that. We have here a couple of quick questions that folks should review before they start an application. It's what kinds of medical marijuana licenses or permits does the city issue, and who can apply for a new medical or retail marijuana business license or permit. I just want to call attention to this kind of briefly. As many of you know, most marijuana business licenses are reserved for eligible social equity applicants until July 1st of 2027. There are some exceptions, and that would be anyone applying for a marijuana testing facility license, off-premise storage facilities that are related to existing business licenses. We have also our research and development licenses, or someone who has an existing medical marijuana store or existing medical marijuana cultivation may apply for a retail marijuana business license that's commonly owned and co-located with an existing medical marijuana business license of the same type. So the example that we share here is that an existing medical marijuana products manufacturer can apply for a retail marijuana products manufacturer's license that will be co-located and commonly owned. These are sort of the exceptions, but in most cases, for our purposes, Most of our business licenses are reserved for eligible social equity applicants until July 1st of 2027. So we just recommend that folks really review this information so that they have a better understanding of it before they get started. And then here we have a step-by-step process where we share and call out our online training videos. We have an online training videos webpage that I've opened here. You'll notice that we have a page for marijuana online applications. We're going to continue to build this out with additional resources for each of our application processes. Audra has really done a fantastic job at creating videos that are going to walk you through sort of every step of the process, how to register for an account, for example, in Denver's Permitting and Licensing Center. So I would recommend that as you start your process, you're reviewing those online training videos if you have questions, and then of course, registering for an account, gathering your required documents, and starting the process in our online permitting and licensing center. This is going to give you kind of more information about each of those critical steps in the application process. And down below, I do want to call out that we have all of the required information and documents for new marijuana business license applications. This is here, and it's a lot of information, I understand. So we've also put together a checklist that you can open, and you will be able to see what documents are required for each of our marijuana business licenses. It's going to give you that information sort of at a high level, and we just ask that you kind of use this to follow along as you're gathering that information or those documents. Something that I will call out for our new business license applications is that our new business license applicants can provide a valid zoning use permit or an acknowledgement of zoning use permit form. A valid zoning use permit is going to be a permit that's issued by our commercial zoning team. The acknowledgement of zoning use permit form is a form that you can submit that shows that you have applied for a zoning use permit, but perhaps there's a little bit of a wait time for you to receive your zoning use permit. We don't want you to have to wait to submit your business license application until you have it in hand. So we're allowing folks to submit the acknowledgement of zoning use permit form. It can be used to submit a new license application. However, a new license will not be issued until the applicant provides a valid zoning use permit. So you'll have to go through some of you may go through a hearing or inspection processes. Ultimately, we will not issue a license for a brick and mortar business until we have that valid zoning use permit. The acknowledgement of zoning use permit form is really for applicants who may need a little bit more time to get their zoning use permit. And you'll see here, there's information for new applicants. We ask you to follow sort of a step-by-step to be sure that you understand what zoning, location, and proximity requirements are, and what zone use district your new marijuana facility location will be in, and then ask you to sign that, and you can submit that with your new license application. So our checklist is really a handy tool for you so that you understand for each of your record types what kinds of information or documents are going to be required. The other thing that I'll call out for our folks who are interested in applying as a social equity applicant, so this is for most marijuana business license types, that exclusivity. We have a document that tells you what the required documents are for social equity applicants. It talks more about who qualifies as a social equity applicant, and then how you show proof of eligibility. Essentially, there are two documents that we would require, or I'm sorry, there could be a host of documents that are required, but at least kind of two categories. One is that you're going to show a correspondence from the Colorado Marijuana Enforcement Division that shows that the applicant's been found suitable for ownership, and that shows the owner's license type is an owner SE or social equity. In addition to that, we're asking that our applicants provide proof that they meet one of those three eligibility criteria. So they may be providing school records or signed affidavits. They may be providing arrest or conviction records, tax returns for the prior year. This is all going to be information that's required for every social equity applicant who's going to be submitting a new business license application. So this is our checklist, again, back on our website. We do have all of the information here that is going to help folks better understand what their application process looks like. And then I'm going to go ahead and hop over to Denver's Online Permitting and Licensing Center. I have already registered for an account. If not, folks can register for an account at the link here. So I am going to go ahead and log in. And we're going to walk through the process of applying for a new retail marijuana store. And if time permits, I'll also add an additional license to that location. So in the example, I would be applying for a new retail marijuana store, and if time permits, a new retail marijuana cultivation. I would be submitting both of those applications as a social equity applicant. So I'm going to be walking through what that process would look like for folks who would be applying through the social equity criteria. So here under business, short-term rental, and occupational licensing, I am going to click Apply New. And you'll see, as I mentioned before, there is not a specific category for our marijuana business licenses. Under all other business licenses, I am going to click Application Package and Continue. Here we have just a short welcome screen that says that we can apply for those retail marijuana business licenses, excluding those retail testing facilities, and medical marijuana licenses, excluding our medical research and development and medical testing facilities. Again, we're hoping to bring those online in 2023. I'm going to click Continue. And this overview page is going to tell me how we're going to submit an application package. In order to submit a package, there are just a series of steps that we're going to ask you to complete. In step 1, we're going to be asking a series of sort of general questions to better understand what your licensing needs are. We're going to be asking about your licensed establishment. That is where your organization or your business operates. We're going to be asking about your entity registration. That is who owns the organization or the business. We're going to be asking about license types, what kind of licenses you're going to be applying for, and then contact information for your licenses. After we complete step 1, we are going to build a required application package for you to complete. So in step 2 of the process, you are going to receive, in many cases, for your very first application, you're going to receive a licensed establishment application, an entity registration application, and associated license applications. In cases where you may be amending a license, you'll also receive amendment applications for that. And then you're going to submit an application package and complete payment. We do remind folks that the application will not be processed without payment. So if you click submit and you receive the payment information, you do have to make that payment before it hits our queue to review your application. And we're going to get started here. All right. In step 1, getting to know you, this says, first tell us about your licensed establishment location. We're going to be entering an address, and we just recommend that everyone reads each of these pages really carefully, particularly for our no-premise transporters who are applying for transporter licenses. If they are a no-premise transporter, we recommend that they select no for this so that they're not required to provide documents. So no-premise transporters would be saying, no, we do not have a licensed establishment in Denver because they have no premise. In this example that we're walking through today, I'm applying for a new retail store, and my new retail store will have a licensed establishment in Denver. So I'm going to select yes and continue my application. Here, the system is going to ask some information about our licensed establishment address. It's important that we get this piece correct. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to use 201 West Colfax as an example. So when I enter my street address, I'm just entering the street number and street name and clicking search. The system's going to be looking at valid addresses. So it's going to validate the address against the Denver address database. I'm going to be looking at 201 West Colfax Avenue, 80202. This is going to show me associated parcel numbers. If I do not know the associated parcel number with the address I've selected, then I'm going to select the very first parcel number. This is going to show me an associated owner. That's the Civic Center Office Building, Inc. I'm going to go ahead and click select. Here, it's also going to ask me if I operate out of multiple units or suites. So this is if I operate out of unit 101 to 103 or unit 101 to 110. If I operate out of building 1, units 101 to 103, that is where I would say yes, and then enter additional information about those multiple units or suites. To keep this example fairly easy, I am going to select no. I do not operate out of multiple units or suites, and I'm going to click continue. What the system is doing now is it's validating that address. It's asking for more information about what type of licenses I would like to apply for. So again, in this example, we're going to be applying for a new retail store, and I'm going to be applying as a social equity applicant. So I'm selecting marijuana store license. You'll notice in the dropdown that there's no medical or retail distinction. As I go through my application process, I will be making the distinction between medical or retail, but as I start, I'm selecting marijuana store license and submit. Continue my application. And now we're going to be asking about the entity or the individual who holds the license. It's going to ask if I have already completed an entity registration for Denver's Department of Excise and Licenses. An entity registration collects ownership information, and I can click here to learn more if I'm not sure. I can certainly reach out to exlapplications@denvergov.org and ask questions. But in this example, I have not completed an entity registration. What you'll notice as we kind of go through the application process is after you have created an entity registration, certain processes are going to become much easier for you. And I'm hoping to demonstrate that at the end of this session. So here, have you completed an entity registration? I am going to click no. It's going to ask more information about the entity or the person who will hold the license. So it's going to ask about the entity type. If I think that I need more information for that, I can click on this link. But I know that I'm going to be operating as an LLC. And then the true name of the entity, I am going to select Test Marijuana Dispensary, LLC. And I'm going to continue my application. Now this is going to ask for main contact information. Your main contact is someone who's going to receive all of the important record, application, or license status updates and notifications. This is important because when your license is ready to be renewed, if there's any kind of pending disciplinary action or something that we may need to be in contact with you about, we will be reaching out to the main contact. So I had mentioned before we started that one of the important things to do is sort of gather all of this information in a folder so that you're better prepared to submit your application. So what I've done is I've started an application documents folder for my 201 West Colfax retail dispensary, and I'm going to be adding a retail cultivation to that location, time permitting. And then I've got separate folders for my business file number or my license, my entity registration, my license establishment. And I have a contact information file here where I've sort of gathered all of the contact information for the folks who I'm going to include in my application. So you'll see that my main contact, I've included myself. I'm going to keep using the same address for home address. It's got some general information that we're asking. So I'm going to be able quite easily to go in, and I think I've already filled in some of this information. So I can go ahead and say that the main contact's name, email address, and phone number is here. Excellent. So I'm going to do a quick check of this information to make sure that it's correct. Joey Pena, joey.pena@denvergov.org, and then my mobile number. Excellent. A mailing address. I'm going to go ahead and add. The mailing address is going to be the same address as my facility. I'm going to keep that here. So it's 201 West Colfax Avenue, Denver, Colorado, 80202. Continue. And an optional email notification recipient. I do recommend that you have an optional email notification recipient. So this is in the event that the main contact maybe transitions away, or cannot be reached, or if they're on vacation. The optional email notification recipient is also going to receive any of those record, application, or license status updates and would be able to take action. So I'm going to go ahead and this is something where we can skip the step and click continue application, but I am going to add an optional email notification recipient, and I'm going to use my colleague Abby here. Excellent. Oh, I'm going to go ahead. Excellent. And then I think I have a phone number that I've just sort of squared away there. Does not like my formatting. So excellent. Again, I can check that information to make sure that it's correct and continue my application. Excellent. So this is very important. At the end of step 1, this is your last chance to edit the information that we have here. This is not your last chance to add additional licenses later in the future. This is your last chance to edit the information you've provided about your entity and your licensed establishment. So really, it is critical that you read this carefully, that you be sure that you've put in accurate information before you continue. So what I've said here is your licensed establishment located in Denver. Yes. If I need to, I can edit this information and change it to no, which is obviously going to change my application package. I have my licensed establishment address, 201 West Colfax Avenue. Again, if there are any edits that need to be made to this, this is my last opportunity to edit them. I cannot add unit numbers later. I have to go through this process now. So 201 West Colfax Avenue, if there are additional unit numbers, I need to go back and make an edit. I've already answered the question, no, there are no additional suites or units. I've indicated that I'm applying for a marijuana store license. That is my very first license application. Like I said, I can apply for additional licenses at this location later, but this is just to get us started today for our example. My entity registration information, I've indicated that I'm an LLC and that the true name of my entity is Test Marijuana Dispensary LLC. So this is again, the last opportunity I have to edit this information. If I am a corporation or any other entity type, I cannot make that change later in the process. I have to make it now. So I have entered this information, my main contact, great, mailing address, optional email notification recipient. Later in the future, folks will be able to quite easily update their contact information. But we do ask that you just make sure that the information is correct, because when we send information about your application, at least initially, it is going to be going to the email addresses that you provide. So I am going to read my oath of application, acknowledge the oath of application, and create my application package. And I think we have some folks popping in with questions in the Q&A. So if my team members who are on can be monitoring the Q&A and answering questions as they come in, that would be excellent. So here you'll see at the end of that, starting step 2, we have taken that information you've provided and we've put together an application package. We have the entity registration, the licensed establishment, and the marijuana store license applications. So I am going to go ahead and start with our entity registration. You'll see I cannot edit this information. That in step 1 was my last opportunity to say it is a limited liability company. So if I had made a mistake, I cannot make this change to corporation or sole proprietor. And then the true name of my entity, Test Marijuana Dispensary LLC, this information cannot be edited here. If it is incorrect, you have to start again with the correct information. So I'm going to continue my application now. And this is telling me essentially the information that I'm going to need to proceed. Back here, I do have my marijuana application checklist. So I've downloaded the checklist and I've started to work through it. to make sure that all of my materials are saved as PDF or JPEGs, that they're properly signed and executed, legible, and that my application is complete. And then I've sort of worked through my records for my licensed establishment. What are the documents I'm going to need? For my entity registration record, what documents will I need? And for my business file number record, what are the documents I'm going to need? You'll see that not all documents are required for everyone. For example, an occupational privilege tax license is required only for transporters. So in this example where I'm applying for a retail store, I am not going to have to provide an occupational privilege tax license. The system knows that. So here we are. As I'm completing my entity registration application, it's going to ask for a list of any trade names under which the entity operates, a copy of the entity's bylaws, operating agreement, partnership agreement, or other applicable organizational documents. And then it's going to ask for owner information, including owner names, date of birth, home address, contact information, and a valid identification for each natural person listed as an owner. I've prepared all of this in advance. You'll see back in my folder for my entity registration, I have my photo ID, my organizational documents, and I've created a little file with mock ownership information. Excellent. So I'm going to come back to my application. And let me just be sure, 1 second. I'm going to do something here. I'm going to stop sharing for just a second, just to make sure that I'm sharing my entire screen so that you can see as I'm working through stuff what I'm doing. Excellent. And then I'm going to go ahead, video. And I think that everyone can still see my screen, so you can see that I'm here at step 2, where I'm providing information about trade names. So I can list all of the trade names that the entity uses. Trade names are not a requirement. You can have one trade name, you can have multiple trade names, but this is your primary business name, including the name that we would see on a sign. So I am going to add a trade name here, and it is going to be called Test Dispensary 1. I'm going to submit and continue my application. Now it's going to ask me to tell about my ownership structure. We've asked that you provide the following information for all owner licensees licensed by the Colorado Marijuana Enforcement Division who will be associated with the license. So owner licensees, that can be an entity, it can be a natural person. Anyone who is an owner licensee and associated with the license must be listed in the ownership structure. You'll find as we go through this, I'm going to provide some information to help you better understand it as you're adding that information to your ownership table. So here, I have my ownership information, and I am going to look back and see that I have Test Holding Company as one of my owners. I'm going to go here, and some of that information pre-fills because I've done this demonstration before. So the ownership is a Test Holding Company, 201 West Colfax, Denver, Colorado, 80202. Instead of a date of birth, I am going to say that it was 01/01/2010, which was the date of incorporation for this holding company. I'm going to use the date of incorporation instead of the date of birth. I'm going to select holding company here, the direct phone number, email address, and the percent owned. So in this case, the holding company is going to own 100% of a license. We do have voluntary race and ethnicity information that you can provide. That is absolutely voluntary. Obviously, in the case of a test holding company, I would not be providing gender, race, or ethnicity information, but I will have a state owner licensee number for my entity, and my holding company cannot be a social equity licensee, so the answer here is no. Now I'm going to submit We'll see that that information for my test holding company populates here. And then I'm going to add myself, 201 West Colfax, Denver, Colorado, 80202. My date of birth, 01/01/1982. My position as owner, 720-527-7208. And then my email address, the percent own. I own 100% of test holding company. I am going to provide this voluntary information on race, gender, and ethnicity. And then my state owner licensee number. And I am going to select that I do qualify as a social equity licensee and that I qualify under the cannabis-related arrest and conviction or civil asset forfeiture criteria and the residence in an opportunity zone or disproportionate impacted area criteria. I'm going to click submit. I did not put in a date of birth, and that's because I used autofill. So sometimes using autofill is going to kick back an error. And I'm going to go ahead, put that in again. Submit. And now that information will populate here in my ownership table. So for this example, I'm going to stop with those two owners and continue the application. This is general contact information. So I want to be sure that everyone understands that the general contact information that you provide here may be shared publicly in an open data catalog or upon request. The information that you provide should allow members of the public to contact your business regarding your licenses or licensed establishments. So this information may be publicly available and should be information that you're comfortable knowing may be available in an open data catalog or shared publicly if we get contacted by a member of the city council, or if we're contacted by a registered neighborhood organization. All of this information is information that we would share under your general contact. So you may want to think more generally about creating. I've said for my general contact, I'm going to use a general phone number and also a general email address. Super. Great. So now here in my required documents page, I'm going to be asked to upload my bylaws, my operating agreement, partnership agreement, or my other applicable organizational documents, and a valid identification for me, Joey Pena. So I have put all of that information together here. I have my valid ID and I have my organizational documents in my entity registration folder. I did all of that ahead of applying for a license and presentation. So I'm going to jump in. Let's see, application documents, entity registration. This is my organizational document, super. And this is my valid identification. Excellent. So now I've uploaded my organizational documents, my photo ID. You'll notice that those are saved as PDF or JPEG files only, which is the only files that are allowed. I'm going to continue my application. And here we are. I have my entity information, limited liability company, test marijuana dispensary. You'll see that I can't edit this because it was information that I provided in step 1. I have my trade name, Test Dispensary 1. I have my general contact information that can be made publicly available. And then I've uploaded my required documents, my photo identification, JPEG, and my organizational documents and operating agreement as a PDF. If I need to, I can go ahead and I can view the details, or I can delete and re-upload these files. I'm going to go ahead and read my oath of application, agree, and continue. Now you'll see here, I have an application for my licensed establishment. So I am going to start, again, this is information about where my licenses live, where I operate. A licensed establishment is where the business operates. So they're going to confirm the information that I provided previously If anything is incorrect, I do have to start all over again. That is why step one, it's important that you're getting that information right. So here, my licensed establishment location, 201 West Colfax Avenue, Denver, Colorado, 80202. I did not say that I operated out of additional units or suites. You'll notice that this information is not editable. I'm going to click continue application. And this is going to give me an overview of the information that I'm going to need to provide for my licensed establishment application. I'm going to provide a location name, zoning use permit or acknowledgement of zoning use permit, a possession of property certificate, a lease or a deed, a floor plan that meets the requirements for marijuana licensing. If I have any questions about those floor plan requirements, I can always zip back to my online, my new online application page, and I can look at floor plan requirements to learn more about what's required there. I also need to provide a copy of my burglar alarm monitoring contract and a copy of my burglar alarm permit. So this is on-site manager information. The following information has to be provided for someone who has the authority to make decisions regarding the licensed establishment. This person, your on-site manager, must have access to and control over the licensed establishment at all times. So we're going to be asking for details to provide along with that on-site manager information. I'm going to click continue application. I've already gathered all of this information, so I can move fairly quickly through this. So this is a location name. We provide a little bit of an example here. I think this makes the most sense when we're thinking about convenience stores or supermarkets. Often those operate with store names or numbers. And many of our marijuana dispensaries, they may operate with street names. So if they have a Colfax location, they may name it Colfax or Spear or 32nd. But location name can just help you sort of manage your licensed applications a little bit easier. So the location name for this, I'm going to say that this is Colfax because perhaps I'm going to have stores kind of all over the city on different streets. I'm going to go ahead and do continue application. And then here, let's collect your on-site manager information. So again, I've already kind of gone through and I've said my on-site manager is me. I've gathered all that information in a spreadsheet so that it's fairly simple for me to enter here. Excellent. Super. 201 West Colfax Avenue, Denver, my direct phone number, my email address, and I am the owner of the business. So I am the on-site contact. That means I can make those decisions regarding the licensed establishment and I have control over it at all times. Submit that information. You'll see that it populates here and I can continue. This is going to ask if I own or rent the property. For this example, I'm going to say that I rent. It's going to ask for the expiration date of my lease. So I'm going to say 01/01/2030 and continue. This is because I used autofill. So using autofill can create some issues there. Excellent. And now here we are with our required documents. Again, this is going to ask for a zoning use permit or an acknowledgement of zoning use permit, my possession of property certificate or a lease that's valid from 90 days from the date of application. You can also provide a deed if you own the property. I did select that I rent. I have to provide a burglar alarm monitoring contract, a burglar alarm permit, and a floor plan that meets the requirements for marijuana licensing. Again, I just want to draw your attention to the zoning use permit or acknowledgement of zoning use permit form. Let's say that you have applied for your zoning use permit, but you have not received it. Then you would provide the acknowledgement of zoning use permit form that is here. You would provide the following information. You would only fill in the information for new applicants if you are a new applicant, and then you would be able to submit that information here. Now, before we issue a license, we are going to be sure that we have a valid zoning use permit on file. So we will reach out and ask you for that copy of your valid zoning use permit. We will not issue a license until you provide a valid zoning use permit. But for the purposes of submitting your application, you can use that acknowledgement form. Then we have that possession of property certificate. I do want to call attention to that as well, because I think the possession of property certificate is something that has simplified licensing processes for a lot of our other business licenses. This is sort of newly available to marijuana business licensees. So instead of providing that big long lease, I've seen leases that are hundreds of pages long. The applicant can provide a possession of property certificate that provides more information about the address, the applicant, the landlord and the tenant, talking about the use of the property. So understanding the property is going to be used for a marijuana dispensary license type or marijuana retail store license type, with all of the applicable signatures and dates. So I can submit this in lieu of a lease or deed. This has, I will say, this has simplified the process for many people. So we do recommend that if it's an option for you, that you provide that document with your application. So here, I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to jump in. I'm in my entity registration. So I'm going to go back to my licensed establishment folder. And this is my zoning use permit, my possession of property certificate, my burglar alarm monitoring contract, my burglar alarm permit. And if at any point, let's say that I haven't quite wrapped up my floor plan yet, I can save and resume my application within 30 days. I can pick up where I left off. I have already gathered everything that I need here. So I am going to jump in and get my floor plan. And now I've uploaded all of my required documents. I'm going to continue the application. So I can review the information that I provided. Again, I cannot edit that information about my licensed establishment address. All of this says that this is my location information, Colfax, my on-site manager information, my lease expiration date. I've indicated that I rent, so I can make edits to this information here before I continue if I need to. I've also provided all of my required documents that I can edit. I can delete and re-upload if I've made a mistake in uploading the wrong document. I can sort of handle that all here. I'm going to go ahead and click yes and continue my application. You'll see that as I do this, each of these is going to start with a complete or edit button. So here, I have not started my marijuana store license application. I have completed my entity registration and my licensed establishment, so I can still make edits to those applications. Before, you'll see I cannot hit my submit application package because I've not completed this piece of the application package. So I'm going to click start. Excuse me, I'm going to click start. It has the true name of my associated entity and my licensed establishment address. Again, this information is not editable because it was provided in step 1. Going to continue my application. And this is telling me what I'm going to need to provide for my marijuana store application. This is where we're going to designate whether this is a retail or medical store application. You're going to remember that the city is no longer issuing new medical store licenses. So we're going to walk through some of this and you're going to see how the application process would look if you were submitting an application for a new retail marijuana store. So we are telling you that you have to provide your related state of Colorado marijuana license number, your alarm permit number, your employer identification number, your Denver city sales tax license, your social impact plan. And if this is information that's not applicable because we're not transferring a license, we are applying new. But if you currently have a delivery permit and you're transferring your license to the online system, you would provide a copy of your current City of Denver license. This is not relevant for today's example, so I'm not going to pay attention to this. And then if I'm applying as a social equity applicant, I provide a social equity applicant packet. So that was the information that I had said, required documents for social equity applicants, who qualifies, and then how do I show proof of eligibility? I need to gather those documents, that letter that shows my suitability from the Marijuana Enforcement Division, as well as I believe I indicated in my application that I would qualify under the arrest or conviction records, and also the residents in a disproportionate impacted area. So I would need to provide those 2 documents along with my letter of suitability. So here I am. I'm going to continue my application. And this is asking the very first question, are you applying for retail or a medical marijuana store license? I am going to select, what's happening? I am going to select retail, and I'm going to continue my application. Excellent. So this is asking if I'm applying for a new application or an existing license. Because we're talking today about new applications, new business licenses, I'm selecting new application. Obviously, the other path is for our existing licensees who have to transition their licenses online. They would select existing license. This is for a new application, so I must click new application. I'm going to continue. This asks if I'm going to be applying as a social equity applicant. I am going to select yes and continue my application. It's asking again under which of the criteria I qualify. I qualify under the arrest, conviction, or civil asset forfeiture in the residence in an opportunity zone or disproportionate impacted area. And I'm going to continue my application. It's asking if I'm going to be applying for a marijuana delivery permit as part of the marijuana store application. For this example today, I'm going to select no, so that we have fewer required documents. But if you are applying for a delivery permit application or a delivery permit as well, you would select yes. Again, I already have one. That is only for people who are transitioning their licenses. So for brand new licenses, we should only be selecting yes or no, and I'm selecting no for the purposes of our example today. Continue my application. And now alarm permit numbers. So another thing that I've done is I've gone back and I've collected some general information for each of my licenses. And I've said, okay, my alarm permit number, I've got my alarm permit number. I'm going to go to my retail dispensary, my alarm permit number, my EIN, my employer identification number, and my state of Colorado business license number. Excellent. Continue my application. What type of store will you have? This is going to be a retail only. It's not going to be retail and medical with separate entrances or retail and medical with a shared area. I'm going to do a retail only. And are the premises to be licensed within 1,000 feet of any school, preschool, childcare establishment, retail marijuana store, medical marijuana center, alcohol or drug treatment facility? The answer to this, to the best of my knowledge, is no. And then I'm going to click continue application. And these are the required documents from my store license. A copy of my Denver City sales tax license, my social equity applicant packet, so that's the finding of suitability from the MED, as well as that arrest and conviction, any arrest or conviction records, and my residence in a disproportionate impacted area documents. I'm going to upload that here, and then my social impact plan, which is required for all of our licensees and is required to be submitted on the city's template for all marijuana business licensees. So the social impact plan. So I have already gathered this information. Here it is. I am going to go here. I've got my Denver, I've got my city sales tax license here. I've got my social equity eligibility packet here. And I've got my social impact plan here, all saved as PDFs. I'm going to continue my application. And now I'm going to agree to my statements of understanding. So we recommend that everyone read this extremely carefully. This is essentially the same as what we have in our paper applications and have had for many years. There are some small adjustments, so read through this before acknowledging and agreeing to any of the terms. You acknowledge and you agree to each of our terms and continue your application. And now we're going to review the information I provided. I cannot edit that information about my entity name or my address. I have the information about applying for a retail store license. And then I have the information about a new application, my social equity status, the criteria under which I qualify. I'm not applying for a delivery permit, my alarm permit number, EIN, and my state of Colorado business license number, making sure that all of this information is correct. I'm also looking again at my required documents that I can review or edit. And then I am going to read and agree to my oath of application and click continue. So what you'll see here is that each of these now says complete or edit. And now I'm able to click on the submit application package. This blue button will not appear. It will be grayed out. You won't be able to click on it until each of these components says complete or edit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and submit my application package. And then I'm going to show you, because we have time, what it would look like if I also wanted to apply for a brand new cultivation at this same location with the same ownership. So I'm going to show you this information. It's submitting my application. Says, congratulations, your application package has been submitted, but processing is not going to begin until payment's been received, unless I have an eligible fee waiver. And as a social equity applicant, some fees are waived. So I'm going to go through and see. Now, what it has given me is an application package number. I mentioned in that presentation that you would receive a licensed establishment number, or an LE, a business file number, or BFN. That is your store. This is my store license number. And then an entity registration number here. I'm going to copy this. And I'm just going to pop it over in my general sort of information. And you will see why here in just a little bit. But I have my LE. I have my LE, my BFN, and my entity number. So now back in the system, this is great. I can go to business licenses and I can look at my records. So what I'll see under my records is that each of these, it shows here. I have my marijuana store license, I have my entity registration, and I have my licensed establishment. If I click on that marijuana store license, I can go ahead and see that what I have is a retail marijuana dispensary. So this marijuana store license is for retail. I'm going to go back into my business licenses, shows my records. If I have a pending action for payment, then I would click on, it would say pay fees due. I don't have an action because I applied as a social equity applicant, so there should be no fees that are due, at least initially. I'm going to go ahead now, and I'm going to show you what it would look like if I wanted to add a retail cultivation to the same address. So I have applied for my store license. Now I'd like to apply for a cultivation license. So I'm going to start this process again, where I click on application package. And this should only take about 10 minutes, and then we'll have some time for Q&A. So this is sort of the same splash screen that I see. It's going to talk to me about submitting an application package. And what you'll see is some of this information is not going to be required or is not going to be relevant because of the work that I've already done. So this is one of the big value adds of the online licensing system, is when I click get started, it says, tell us about your licensed establishment location. This is familiar because we've just done this with our store license. Is your licensed establishment located in Denver? My answer is yes. I'm going to continue my application. And I'm going to use, again, 201 West Colfax. So when I click search, it's going to ask the same questions that it asked last time. It is 201 West Colfax 80202. I'm selecting that first parcel number again. Civic Center office building, select. It's going to ask that question, do you operate out of multiple units, suites, etc.? I'm saying no. Continue. And what the system is doing is it's checking to see what might already exist at 201 West Colfax Avenue. It's looking to see if I may have already registered information. So what you'll see here is it's going to ask me this question. Is this your entity registration? It says there may already be business licenses at this address. Will your new licenses be held under one of the following entity registrations? If yes, please check the box to the left of your entity registration before continuing. So the answer is yes, and it is going to be at this LE with this entity number. And I know that because I'm looking back here, the information, my entity was 0010655, 0010655, and my LE 0010654, 0010654. So I know that my LE and my entity matches what's here. So I'm going to select this information and continue. And now the system is asking me what license I'm applying for. I'm going to apply for that cultivation, so a marijuana cultivation facility license. Remember, later in the process, I designate that it's going to be retail, so I'm not making that selection here. Continue the application. And now it's already got a lot of the information that I've already put in. It has my main contact information. It has my mailing address. It has my optional email notification recipient. And this is the last chance for me to edit the information that I've just provided. So this is all of the information that I've just provided for my store. It has my LE number now, my licensed establishment number now. It has my entity number now because I've already pre-filled that information. So I am going to go down, make sure that all of this information is correct. All of the information I've provided here is accurate. I'm going to agree to my oath of application and create application package. And what you'll see is in creating the application package, I do not have to redo my licensed establishment or my entity registration because I've already provided that information. The system knows, I have indicated to the system that I am going to be putting this cultivation facility license at a location with my store license, and it's going to be owned by the same entity that owns my store license. So I'm going to start my cultivation application. You'll see the associated information already pre-filled. This is again telling me what I'm going to need: my state of Colorado marijuana license number, alarm permit, EIN, social impact plan, my related state of Colorado marijuana license. If I'm transitioning a license online, that's not for me. I'm applying new. If I'm applying for a retail cultivation application, in some cases, very rare cases, you have to provide that information for non-conforming zone districts. That's in very rare cases, and I would ask that before you really kind of focus on this, that you would reach out to us at exlapplications@denvergov.org if you have questions. And then if you're applying as a social equity applicant, you're providing that social equity applicant packet. So just as a really quick run through, I'm going to go through this and I am going to breeze through this application. Really what I wanted to show you was how the system is reading that LE and the entity numbers and how I can co-locate certain licenses that are at the exact same location. So I think the thing to remember is you're only creating new licensed establishments if it's a new location. You're only creating new entities if it's a new entity. So here I am saying that this is a new application. I'm going to answer yes to this, same as my store application, that I'm qualifying under those two criteria. It's asking me a series of questions that are specific to retail marijuana cultivation licenses. Are they going to be licensed within 1,000 feet of a school or residential zone district? I'm going to say no. Do I perform cold water extraction? I'm going to say yes. Will this be in a facility located in a zone district other than IAIB? These are our conforming zone districts. The answer to this question is going to be no. It is going to be, for purposes of today's demonstration, I'll say that this is going to be in an IA zone district. So I'm going to continue my application. My alarm permit number, I'm going to go ahead. So you saw that I had all that general information and I created some test cases for things here. So I'm going to go ahead and just jump in and fill in the information that I've sort of already created. And excellent. All right, so now it's only asking me for my social equity applicant packet and my social impact plan, both of which I have, my social equity packet with my eligibility information, my arrest record, my finding of suitability letter from the MED, the information for my residents in the disproportionate impacted area. And I'm going to upload my social, not that one, I'm going to upload my social impact plan. And I'm going to press continue. I, again, acknowledge and agree to all of our statements of understanding, which I recommend that everyone read carefully. I recommend if you have questions that you work with your attorneys and consultants to figure this out, to better understand some of that. We're going to zip through. I can edit the information here. Excellent. Recommend that we read through this really carefully. Continue application, and what you'll see is that I can now submit this because I have already completed an LE and entity record. And now the only thing that I'm applying for at that location is that marijuana cultivation facility license. I'm going to submit application package. And I'm issued that new BFN. So here I'm going to go to my business licenses. And what you'll see is I now have my BFN for my cultivation facility, my BFN for my store license, and then I have my entity registration and my licensed establishment numbers. I've already submitted those two packages, but here's the information that's pending before the department. Okay, so that was a walkthrough of how to use our new online application system. I am going to stop sharing my screen. I'm going to turn back on my camera. And we are going to take questions. I know that some folks have been asking questions in the Q&A. So let's see. I'm seeing questions that have been answered. Great. Can you fill out an application if you're not a social equity applicant? Is there an error message? We're asking folks to sort of do some of that research up front. There are very limited scenarios, to Rod's point, where you can still apply for a license. I mentioned that co-located and in common ownership, but the specific criteria, generally at some point prior to someone submitting an application, we have sort of communicated about their social equity status, but it's a great question, Pam, about them being able to upload or to complete an application. Another excellent question about what do you enter as the date of birth for an owning entity? I covered this and Rod answered the question. The date of incorporation. Date of incorporation for an owning entity like a holding company is an excellent thing to put in that because it is a required field. Let's see. Okay, let's see. Excellent. This is great. I see that most of those questions are answered. If anyone has a question, they can feel free to raise their hand. Otherwise, we can cut this early. I do want to remind folks that if you have questions, if you're running into issues with the system, we're working through bugs. This is new for so many of us. So we are encountering very rare sort of bugs that have not appeared in any of our testing, but in a real world environment, things look a little bit different. So if you're encountering something that you think is a little bit strange, you have a question, send that to exlapplications@denvergov.org. As much as I love hearing from every one of you, please don't copy me on those emails, or please don't copy EXL submit or marijuanainfo@denvergov.org. The reason being that can create those duplicate Salesforce cases. And in that event, your inquiry might just be closed as a duplicate case and you might not get an answer. So exlapplications@denvergov.org, that is the best way to get your questions answered. Like I said at the beginning, we have tech folks, we have licensing folks, we have someone like me who sort of operates in both policy and operations, monitoring that email and receiving those inquiries. We're trying to get back to everyone as soon as possible to help them work through some of those questions. So exlapplications@denvergov.org, that's where we want you reaching out if you have questions. And then also, just as a reminder, really utilize the resources that we have available on our website. Really utilize the resources, the checklists, the online training videos that Audra created that really help walk you through step by step, really similar to what we did today. A lot of those training videos are going to do the exact same thing. So watching through the training videos and really preparing before you start your business license application, making sure you have all of the required information and documents like you saw today as I was kind of navigating back and forth between my folders, gathering all of the ownership information, gathering all of your required documents, being sure that they're saved in acceptable file extensions. So we just really want to be sure that you're prepared to submit those license applications when you start. Excellent. And I don't see questions, so I think that Abby and I will cut it short here. I really appreciate everyone joining us today for the presentation. I am excited to see so many of you interested in learning how this process works. Absolutely open to answering questions outside of the forum. I would ask they go to exlapplications@denvergov.org, and so that we can kind of work through those together as a team, and really appreciate everyone attending today. Happy holidays, and if you have a break over the next 2 weeks, I hope that you enjoy it. I hope it's restful. We will be back in January with sort of starting a webinar series on our amendment application. So we'll be showing folks how to submit a modification of premise amendment or a change of location or change of ownership. So we're going to be showing folks how to do all of that in the new year. So tune in, be sure that you're subscribed to our bulletins and signing up for those so that you know how to submit those applications. And we will be very excited to see you all then. Safe travels to anyone traveling. Have a wonderful holiday season, and we will see you all soon.